The cole crops that Steve talked about in the garden are here in the kitchen now. They're also called cruciferous vegetables, and they're some of the healthiest things that you can eat. The kinds that we have here are just a variety of the cruciferous family. Now, the reason that these are so helpful is because they're very high in vitamin C overall. Those that are darker are going to be higher in beta carotene, which is going to be helpful as an antioxidant as well as vitamin C in reducing your risk of certain kinds of cancer. Now, also you will see in all of these, there's another nitrogen-containing compound called indoles, and these are also linked to prevention of certain types of cancer, particularly things like breast cancer and colon cancer and rectal cancer. How this mechanism works, we're not sure at this particular time, but we do know that people that have diets that are high in cruciferous vegetables do tend to have lower rates of cancer. So you may want to increase your consumption of these, not only because they taste good, because they're so nutritious for you as well. Now, we're going to look primarily at Brussels sprouts today, but the kinds of principles that I'm going to talk about as far as cooking will apply pretty much to all the cruciferous vegetables because they all have similar chemical structure. They're all in the same family, so if we do something to this one and you copy this, you'll be able to accomplish some things with the others as well. Looking at the Brussels sprouts that we have today, you'll notice that first of all, these are not necessarily as good a condition as we would like. Some of the outer leaves are damaged. They aren't as bad as some that you may see in the market at some time or bring in from the garden or have in your refrigerator for a long period of time where you have the leaves actually turning yellow. But you will want to cut away the base of this. Now, don't cut away the base so much that you have the leaves falling off when it's cooking because you pretty much want to keep this thing intact. But you can take away some of the outer leaves that are damaged a little bit. Now, as you're beginning to cook, you'll also notice that most Brussels sprouts, like most peas and carrots, don't all come in the same size. And you'll have some that are large like this, and you'll have some that are small like this one. And you'll want to pretty much try and cook them or create them at least into a similar size. So that if you have larger ones, what you may want to do is cut them in half the long way. That will enable you to have this cook at a rate that will be very similar to this one. Now, another thing that you'll want to do, and you can do this with broccoli as well, is cut an X in the stem. Now, this is optional. If you're going to cut the whole thing in half, you don't need to do this, but cut a little bit of an X in there. Because the core is going to cook at a slower rate, you want the heat to be able to penetrate there. The leaves, just like cabbage leaves, you want to cook as quickly as possible, and this will speed the whole thing up so that you won't have to wait for all of the heat to penetrate to the center and overcook the outside. All right. Now, as far as cooking most of these vegetables, you want to do three things. First of all, you want to try and cook them as quickly as possible so that you have three things happening. One is that you don't have that bad flavor and that bad smell that comes out. As these cook, there are chemicals in there that will be released by either the cutting or the destruction of it or simply the amount of heat that comes in there. And as that happens, some chemicals such as ammonia and hydrogen sulfide are going to be released. And if the faster you cook those, the less amount of that's going to be released, and so the less of the smell. You also get a lot better nutrient retention when you cook faster, and people like them better. So you get all of these kinds of things happening. Now, steaming is one option. You want to use as little water as possible when you cook them. So steaming is a good idea because you keep them above the water. Now, the water, it would in effect reduce the amount of nutrients that's there because you have the dilution of the nutrients themselves. Now, a lot of the nutrients are water soluble, but they're not destroyed by the water or the heat. And so if you have some way that you can use that cooking water, you'll be ahead in the game. Now, you can also boil these. If you're going to boil them, have the water boiling when you put them in with any of the cruciferous vegetables, again, because that shortens cooking time and reduces the amount of that off smell that you get, the off flavor that particularly kids may not be particularly fond of, and it also will maximize the nutrients. With the steaming, I've got these in a steamer basket. We're going to put them on to heat. If it's a good idea, if you can, to have the water boiling before you lower the steamer basket in there. Again, shortens cooking time. Remember, when you're cooking all the cruciferous vegetables, the three things you want to do are minimize the amount of water that you use or the contact with the water, minimize the amount of cooking time that you have, and finally, let the volatile acids out. After it's cooked for about a minute or two, take the lid off for 10 to 15 seconds so those volatile acids can get out and you'll get a lot better product. The particular one we're going to work with today is called Brussels sprouts and apples, and it's very simple. We used about 1.5 pounds of Brussels sprouts. I have one onion that I've sauteed with about 2 to 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and we'll stir those together. I have 2 cooking apples, and these are raw, and we've used red ones. These particular ones are Rome, but you could use almost any kind because we're not going to heat them, so if Red Delicious is your favorite, that would be fine. We have 2 tablespoons of raisins, and I have 3 tablespoons of honey and 3 tablespoons of lemon juice that I'm going to stir together just a little bit. Now these, I would recommend that you serve this while the vegetables are still warm. Even though the apples are not cooked, it will give it a little bit better flavor. Put these on a serving plate. And try and catch all of them that have moved elsewhere. Now, one of the things you also want to remember about cruciferous vegetables is that as they are stored, you'll have continued change in the carbohydrate itself. And that's the reason that the stem on the broccoli will continue to get harder and harder the longer it's in the refrigerator, because the carbohydrate will change from sugar into lignin, which is one that's not softened with cooking. Another thing to remember with cooking these is that you don't want to use an aluminum pan, because those changes with the color and the flavor will both be promoted and happen faster with an aluminum pan than they will with stainless steel or glass. With cauliflower, if you use aluminum, you'll also have color change. It will change from white to yellow, and if you use a steel pan, such as one of the big heavy cast iron pans, you'll have a change to blue. And those are normal changes, and you can go ahead and eat them, but they're not particularly inviting. I hope you'll try cruciferous vegetables. They're good for you, they taste good, and they make the table very, very colorful. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.